We're joined by Rodney Smith, who's Professor of Australian Politics at the University of Sydney. Thank you for joining us, Professor. And I'd love to pick up first on the US-China tensions. How do you see Mr. Albanese navigating these in his second term with a growing Chinese presence in the region?
I think essentially the second term of the Albanese government will be one of continuity rather than change. So Albanese, as you saw in that clip there, has highlighted his moderate approach to policy, and that includes foreign policy and balancing Australia's trade interests with China and its security ties to the United States. And I think that will only continue over this coming term. And there are various initiatives that the Albanese government will take, particularly strengthening ties with very close regional neighbours in the Pacific, Papua New Guinea, some of the other island states in the Pacific, and they'll be of priority. As you saw, or as you said, rather, the first visit overseas will be to Indonesia, and that's clearly a key relationship for the Australian government to pursue.
All right, about Indonesia, what do you read into that choice? It's quite significant, isn't it, when there's a mention of the first overseas trip?
It's perhaps not as significant in Australia as it is in some countries. Australia has a lot of important relationships in the region, but it does point to the importance of Indonesia and the growing Indonesian economy and Indonesia's strategic importance. But Mr. Albanese, as Prime Minister, will make a number of visits in his second term, as he did indeed in his first term, to try and cement relationships between Australia and a number of countries in Southeast Asia and the Pacific.
And as the congratulations come in following his win, Mr. Albanese has already signalled closer defence cooperation with the United Kingdom, having already spoken to Sir Keir Starmer. So what will Australia's posture be toward other allies or alliances like AUKUS and Quad now, after a previous reliance on the US?
Well, as the acronym AUKUS suggests, there's already a strong relationship with the United Kingdom. The Australian government will want to intensify that. Australia has been concerned about developments in Europe, including the war in Ukraine, of course, and has been a contributor to that effort in terms of defence material. So I think there will be something of a broadening of the traditional, at least post-Second World War, emphasis on the United States. But Australia, by the same token, will do nothing to try to jeopardise the Australia-US defence relationship, and particularly within the framework of AUKUS and the future provision of nuclear submarines for use by the Australian Defence Forces.
There's been a reaction from President Trump about Australia's election result. He says that he's very friendly with Anthony Albanese, who in turn said that the two gentlemen had a very warm phone call. It's been cordial as well between the US and Canada's Mark Carney so far. Have you an idea about how the White House really feels about the future with centre-left parties in power?
I have no special insight into what's going on inside the White House, but the relationship between Australia and the United States historically has been strong, whether it's been a centre-left party, the Labor Party in power, or the centre-right Liberal National Party coalition. Both sides of Australian politics, or both the major sides of Australian politics, have been very keen over the years to preserve strong relations, particularly strong defence relations with the United States, and to do nothing to really jeopardise that. And that's been a tradition, since, as I say, the Second World War, when the centre-left Labor Party under Prime Minister Curtin announced that it was going to rely more on the United States. And so we really haven't seen in the period since then a strong move away from that by the centre-left party in Australia. Unlike, for example, in New Zealand, where there was a ban on nuclear-powered warships and so on, Australia has never gone down that kind of path and has always been careful not to antagonise the United States.
Okay, Mr. Trump's just denied, actually, on a TV interview that he's up for, or he's not up for another term. He's not. And that signals perhaps an end at some point to tariff pain, to geopolitical shakeups. I know it's early days now, but how can Mr. Albanese's Labour Party retain its significance when the flight to safety isn't as urgent as it is now?
I think the impact of the tariffs will continue for some time yet. So I think it will be a priority of the Albanese government to negotiate the best deal that it can with the United States. And prior to election day, those negotiations were underway. But by the same token, there's an acceptance in Australia and by the Australian government that the tariffs are here, the tariffs on Australian goods and services and so on are here, and that Australia just has to deal with that. And I think that's why the election, to a large extent, in terms of that relationship with the United States, boiled down to which party is going to be best able to manage the impact of those tariffs. Now, traditionally, you would think that would be the Liberal and National Party because they're generally seen as the better economic managers by voters in Australia. But in this election, the Labor Party, because of its record over the last 3 years and the way it presented itself as a disciplined, cohesive party with a set of policies that were generally well explained, was able to take that mantle away from the coalition party. And so Labor was returned as the party that seemed to give the best possibility for dealing with the tariffs in the current context.
And Mr. Albanese has also suggested that his government increased its majority by not modeling itself on President Trump's administration and its whims. How possible is it for a major economy like Australia to fend that off realistically?
Well, I think Mr. Albanese was very careful not to directly mention the United States in his victory speech on Saturday night. He just referred generally to other countries rather than, singling out a particular country. I think Australia will do this the way that it always has, and that is by, as a middle power, by negotiating in good faith with allies in striking deals where it can, particularly free trade deals. They've been the direction that Australia has pushed over the last 30 or 40 years. And I think that will continue with other countries that are prepared to open up their economic borders even further. And so I think there will be some diversification of Australia's markets and looking for new markets. And it may be that the United States becomes a slightly less important trading partner for Australia, although it will still remain over the next years of the Trump administration an important trading partner.
Appreciate your insight. Rodney Smith, Professor of Australian Politics at the University of Sydney. Thank you.